Welcome to How's Your ePresence on Business Radio X. How's Your ePresence is a show designed to help business people or companies understand ways to implement social media better. We're all in the business to make money. Why not use social media to help increase your revenues? This show is managed by ePresence, and ePresence manages social media for organizations that understand that business is done more effectively by the individual profile on social media. I'm Mark Galvin, coming to you live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. So what's this show all about? I kind of introduce this every month, and I've got some new notes here I'm going to mention. You know, I met with a business person yesterday. He is a local restaurant owner, and he would like to attract investors to help him open up more restaurants. And he had a dormant LinkedIn profile. Well, he realized by cleaning up a LinkedIn profile and making sure that he has a robust online presence, he could actually help attract more investors. That's what you need to do on social media, is think about what it is your mission is and how do you achieve that on a personal level. That is what we do and what we talk about here on How's Your ePresence. What best platforms can you use to engage your businesses? You know, maybe you're trying to reach young people on social media. What young people's platforms are out there? Well, we talk about all those fun things and help you reach those folks. So here on How's Your ePresence, we share some time talking about what our ePresence research team has found out, what's new on social media, what we need to share. And, very importantly, we bring in a guest every single month. Oh, I should have mentioned one other thing. My handle on Twitter, and you can live tweet me right here during the show, is at ePresenceMG. That's EPRESENCE, M for Mark, G for Galvin. That's my social media handle everywhere, but especially on Twitter. Send me a message. If I miss you during the show, I will respond to you on the next show or on the next podcast that we drop. Anyway, let's get back to a very important person. We have a wonderful guest with us today. We have Beth Schiavo. Beth is the founder and CEO of The Gender Plan. Beth, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. You and I have had many conversations, and they've always been very interesting. And in fact, you and I, when we first had a conversation, I immediately knew I wanted to have you on the show because you have, and we're going to get into this, you have such an interesting perspective that is challenging. And you challenged me in some ways, and the ways to look at the way we can help bring more women to the workplace and the challenges that go with that. So we're going to jump into that in the second part of the show. But before we do,
yes,
because I want to tell everybody who you are. I found out that you went to Virginia Tech.
I did attend Virginia Tech. My family, my extended family is from Blacksburg, Virginia. It is a school that we've had numerous cousins. I think the majority of my cousins and me have all attended Virginia Tech, as did my father. So
wow,
we're all Hokies.
That is fantastic. And so there was a game where a local team, University of Georgia, played Virginia Tech in the Sugar Bowl.
I do recall that.
In Atlanta.
I do recall that game, yes.
It was a very unique Sugar Bowl. And by the way, Virginia Tech, I'm sure you remember this, came back and won that game in the waning minutes. It was an exciting game.
They did.
Not so much for the home team, but very cool.
Sorry for that.
Hey, you know what? It was well coached, and it was I'm gonna tell you what. I don't want to look at the replays on it, but it was done. It was a great coach. Let's see, that was Rodriguez, I think, if I remember right. Coach Rodriguez. Yeah. Well, anyway, we're not on a sports game. If this was a sports show, we would get Mike Salmon over here, and he'd join us.
That would be a short show.
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
That's not your thing, is it? Huh? Well, let's do this. I'd like to ask you a question before we get into your experience. Is about you went to school at some place called the American International School in Vienna.
I did.
Tell me about that school, because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so similarly to how there's an Atlanta International School here in Atlanta, the American International School in Vienna, Austria, is one in a slew of international schools in some of the larger cities in Europe and then in Northern Africa as well. And they're all connected to each other, but through sports games and what have you. But it's a school that you're able to go to if your parents happen to be working in that country. And my father was working for the United Nations with the IAEA, and I was in school there from the age of 15 until I graduated from high school.
Wow, what a great time period.
Yeah.
Well, I told her I wasn't going to do this, but my daughter is sitting here watching us do this, and she is in high school now, and I can imagine the experience that you would have at that age going
Absolutely.
into international school. That's impressive. Well, so let's talk a little bit about your experience. And one of the things that you did that I thought was very interesting, I'm going to peel back all the way to EY. So that's used to be called Ernst & Young, so they're officially no longer Ernst & Young. Is that right?
Yeah, it's EY.
All right. So you were an
14
audit
year.
partner with EY
Yes.
for many years. What does audit partner mean to us pedestrians?
Sure. Well, I think that the easiest way to say it is the auditors are the watchdogs of financial reporting. So if you are buying stock, if you want to buy Facebook stock, or the upcoming Uber IPO, if you want to use that as an example, those financial statements have to be reviewed and checked off as being materially correct. And slash
audited.
Audited.
Yeah.
That's
so
right.
when you got that EY audit stamp
Right.
on there, it means that this is real and
That's right.
and it's and you can trust it.
That's right.
And so, well, you left there, it looks like, and you started working at North Highland.
That's right.
A very well-respected organization as managing director and chief financial officer. And as I look at this, you've done a lot of other things. You've been board members at a lot of places, and what it looks like, including Girl Scouts. There's other board members here at Woodruff Arts, Tech Bridge, at Fern Bank here in Atlanta. A lot of great experience. And then you became an independent contractor, senior financial executive. So you're helping groups on their financial side. And then you started the Gender Plan.
That's correct.
And this is new-ish.
It's new.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It takes an accumulation of different experiences that I've had becoming a female executive and having some success as a female executive, but also more specifically work that I did in some of my former organizations that you've already mentioned. As a female leader, helping design as well as implement gender inclusivity strategies within those companies and using that experience, and now doing that on my own as a single shingle.
I am guessing that when you started working at EY, when you filled the room full of the other auditors, how many men were in the room compared to women?
Yeah. Well, right out of college, it was about 50-50.
Okay.
To be honest.
Well, good.
But it very quickly, within the first 4 to 5 years, those numbers would change pretty dramatically.
And so how did they change? In which direction?
Well, men outnumbering women 2 to 1. And then the year that I made partner, it was very common in not just EY, but the other professional services firms to be under double digits in terms of partners that were women. So the numbers drop off pretty significantly.
Yeah, I can see why you
And that
did.
has improved a great deal since then, but back in the day when I first became partner.
Yeah, I can see why why you started your organization. I can't wait to get into that.
Sure.
But before we do, I'd love to do a little social media update. And we talked about this beforehand, so I'm not totally blindsiding you. So glad you're here, but let's talk about social media. There are the struggles that we have on social media today, especially when you're trying to leverage social media from a business perspective, is what works. What social media post should I make? It happens to me all the time. In fact, I was talking to a client right before I came here. She has 4 different businesses. She's busy, and how she's trying to figure out how can I get my audience to engage with me. So I want to go through a couple of the different classifications that work really well. The first thing, and we've talked about it a lot, is video. Video is so important. If you can leverage video in your posts, you're going to find that you'll reach a much larger audience. So, so my wife is a corporate recruiter, and we sat down in our dining room at the house, and we did a video on her sharing. Here's the stuff that you do to get a job. What do you need to have on your resume? What do you need to, how do you need to dress? Blah blah blah. The basic kind of stuff. And then I jumped in and said, this is what you should do on the LinkedIn side. So that video had 6,000 views, right? What is a view? A view on LinkedIn means that someone watched it for 3 seconds. Now, that doesn't seem like much, but the 3 seconds means that they started it and they started to view it. So that's why that 3 second rule is there. So they didn't just pass by. So if you're getting somebody's eyes for 3 seconds, by the way, our attention span is 7 seconds. Claire, are you still here? Oh, yep. So it's over 7 seconds for Claire. But 7 seconds is the attention span of most U.S. Adults today, and especially it has to do with social media. So you're getting them for longer than 7 seconds in general if they're paging through their feed. So video's big. And you know what? Have you ever tried to do video? And when you launched the gender plan, did you do some videos? I think
I did not do video, and I would love to do video. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I experience it myself as a consumer. I see my own children. I mean, it's that pause that they have when they see the video as opposed to just print. So I understand and believe that powerful message. Yeah.
So I am amazed at how often I walk in and I'm running into my kids, and I have 3 kids, how they are interacting with their device through video, either in a FaceTime or something like that. So TikTok is, you know what? Did you hear it was just banned in India?
Was TikTok banned in India?
Yeah.
Really?
They're that's a whole nother story. We'll have to talk about that next time. So video, figure out how to get that out there, and you can shoot simple video. In fact, we're taping this conversation today because it is such great content. So always figure out how you can leverage a little video, and it needs to be authentic. So there's this gap of really produced beautiful video, which you should have. That's good to have a 1-minute version of that goes on your website, or the impromptu one. Just drop up your phone and say, hey, I'm sitting here with Beth. We were just talking about something, and we think that you guys can benefit from it, and have a quick conversation. Minute long is good if you can kind of keep it short. So video is easier than we think, and I do recommend that you leverage that. Here's another kind of post. Something that is that gives tips and tricks. That's free tips and tricks out there. And one of my favorite, and this kind of blends a couple of the topics together, but did you know how to get that sticky stuff off of the bottom of glasses?
No.
So, yeah, you go to this happened to you.
I know what you. Yes, of course it's happened to me.
You go buy a new set of glasses, and you're in the kitchen, and you're trying to pull those stickers off, and they don't come off. The sticky stuff is there forever.
Well, I just cheat, and I just put it in the dishwasher and just hope for the best. But
and it doesn't go away.
It doesn't. No.
You're gonna die when I tell you this.
Oh, no.
Peanut butter.
Really? Well, I think peanut butter is really the answer to most things.
Well, if you ask my wife, that's true.
Yeah.
But and she gets a little upset. I can't use the expensive peanut butter. But if you put peanut butter on that sticky stuff, leave it on there for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, it'll wipe right off.
Someone had to try that hack.
How in the world?
Right.
Well, I'm assuming there was some scientist out there that said,
sure.
you know what? This will absorb the whatever. There's some sort of residue that is pulling out of the goo, the glue, whatever that may be. So that's the kind of thing you could share that in your social media, and it's just helpful. It's a good tip and trick. It'll help people in their everyday lives, and that is good quality content. The other thing I want to mention is a personal story. Share a personal story in your feed, and people will find that interesting, and they'll interact with it. So a good example of a personal story is you've experienced something and there was a reaction. So always think about that. Look for those opportunities where you can share a personal story that has a good positive end. Is a good thing to do. So those are some good tips of things that you can post about. We'll have more in future shows. There's a couple things. Something I do want to mention. There's a feature inside LinkedIn Messenger. So that is on your mobile phone where you can quickly talk to someone right through LinkedIn. You can schedule appointments through there now. So look for a little icon. So if you and I are talking and we're using that function, there's a calendar icon I can touch, and I can schedule an appointment right from the LinkedIn Messenger app. So check that out.
Yeah.
Embedded in LinkedIn.
That's great, because a lot of my contacts come through a LinkedIn dialogue to begin with.
Well, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you find that the LinkedIn Messenger function is very useful.
It has worked for me, and kind of going back to how you use your channels.
Right.
And you may have different strategies for different channels. I mean, LinkedIn for me is your thought capital channel, and it's where you share, maybe your take on, for me, I share takes on, a new article coming from the Harvard Business Review or from the Forbes Women Council, and I'll read it and I'll repost it and give my take on it. add something that's anecdotal on top of it, and it will get attention and it will get more views, and then someone will reach out to me through LinkedIn and say, hey, I'd like to have more conversations. So for me, it's been very helpful. For Instagram and Facebook, it's a little different. That's more about showing who you are, your values, your purpose. What's the purpose of your business, and why is it important to you, and why are you passionate about it? And those posts seem to resonate more so than...
That is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very good. Very smart.
Mm-hmm.
When you're sharing a post,
Mm-hmm.
this is something we've come to learn. If you have something that's really important, post your comments about that article, but don't actually post the link to the article. Go to the comments and drop the link, because it will it'll optimize that post even more. LinkedIn's starting to minimize just posts that have a link to an article.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
Trying to make it more personal. They're all trying to figure that out. How can they make the system work on a more personal basis?
Yeah, that's great. Great advice.
Let's pivot.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have we've talked a lot about this, and I wish we could have recorded some of those conversations, because they were rather robust. The starting point for today is a simple question. How can businesses promote women in the workplace while not alienating men? Because that's, and then, and as a guy, that is one of those things that, yeah, absolutely. I think women should be promoted, and they should, there ought to be an absolute level playing field. I have 2 daughters. I want them to have every opportunity to get whatever career options they have. But there does seem to be a sense today that, that some of the guys in the workplace are like, hello, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a complex question, and it has a number of different arms and legs to it. I'll start just putting some context to that. I did not know this actually myself, and I do a great deal of research in this area. But if you look at the 2018 report from McKinsey and leanin.org, they did a report on women in the workplace.
So McKinsey, everybody's heard of. Yeah. Lean In, that's Sheryl Sandberg's group, right? Good.
That's correct.
And she wrote the book called
Lean In, correct. And so they collaborated together on this report to talk about the advancement and kind of where we are from a gender equity in the workplace perspective.
Sure.
Great information. But probably the stat that stood out the most, and it's the fairly simplistic stat, but it's been 30 years now that women have outpaced men in getting bachelor's degrees. 30 years. And I know, I see the shock on your face, and I had the same.
Wow, absolutely.
So, right. So what is that? Why is that important, or why is that interesting? When you look at leadership now, you still have a minority of women in leadership positions. And so when going back to your question, I think the most important way to do this is to be very pragmatic about instituting change. I mean, the reality is men are still a majority in leadership roles in the majority, and women are starting to make some incredible strides in that direction, but we have a ways to go. And if you've had 30 years of women outpacing men going into the workplace, something is happening with their experience along the way that is keeping them from getting to those same levels that their male counterparts.
Yeah, when you look at that data, when you share that information, it's obvious something is happening from that point where they walk out with a diploma to 20, 30 years later. And so obvious questions come up, or are they choosing other paths instead of the career path?
That's right.
And I think there's a cultural piece to that, that this is the direction you need to go in. But how have you seen women manage that over the long term?
Yeah, so, I think what's been most successful, and this again kind of goes back to your question about how do you not alienate men, and that is to really treat it as the business issue that it is, instead of coming and having a dialogue purely from an emotional perspective. I mean, for me as a female, and whenever I've experienced gender bias in the workplace, I mean, there is a certain level of emotion that comes with that, but that's not really relevant from a business perspective.
But we're all emotional beings.
We are.
Without a doubt. I mean, we are, and data has shown time and time again, I don't have any numbers in front of me, but we make decisions that are not based on just data. Even if we have data in front of us, we sometimes choose emotional decisions. Even men, they don't want to admit that, but it's true.
Well, the men that I coach, particularly the executive men that are in positions, I mean, the majority of them, vast majority of them, are so well-intentioned when it comes to women in the workplace, especially those that are these high-performing women that they really want to see succeed. They may have daughters, that they're proud of, and they want them to have that experience. And
Absolutely.
so they're very well-intentioned. I mean, we're not really in an environment now where many people are experiencing that Mad Men environment, that we've seen on the show. I mean, there's certainly, I'm sure, pieces of that, but that's certainly not the norm.
That does remind me of #MeToo, but we'll get there.
Yes, but I think what you have to acknowledge is that men want to be successful in this as well. I had one male executive I was coaching, and he says, I have 2 women that work for me. He goes, and I know they're going to leave because they have small children and they can't handle the stress, and we're not creating an environment that makes it easy for them because they don't have a lot of flexibility, and he's terrified because they're his best performers.
Now, everything you just said, if I had said that, I would get ridiculed. It's really interesting because as men, I feel like, and this is so interesting to me, is because as a man, I feel like I can't express those views today that, I do worry as if I'm going to invest a lot of money and I think we do get to know the women in our organization that it's possible that she may want to have kids, but I should not immediately assume that she's the one that's going to stay home and take care of them.
That's absolutely right. I had my own personal experiences with that where I was in the promotion pipeline to make partner. And I had people, I was pregnant with my first child, and they said, well, you're going to come back to work? And I was like, well, gosh, I mean, let's overcome the presumption that I'm actually not going to come back. And and it is a personal decision. And I think the reason why it's actually becoming easier is because companies are starting to recognize that they need to create an environment that supports that level of flexibility if they want to retain their women. And it has to be a business imperative for them. In the accounting profession, for instance, women outnumber men in obtaining CPAs 2 to 1, and so
unbelievable.
If you are a CPA firm, a large CPA firm, or a smaller one, and you want to attract and retain the best talent, you're going to have to keep your women. And so you can just say, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully things will work out. Or you can say, well, what do I need to do? How do I solve this problem? And let's just really identify what the problem is and have real dialogue around that.
Well, some of it used to be that you had to identify that it was a problem.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's the first step. Okay, there's a challenge here. Why why are all the CPAs in this firm all men? And and the data shows that there's plenty of educated women out there that could fill these roles. And there's also a perspective that comes with women in the workplace. When you have diverse ideas, you can do better than kind of that siloed effect.
Well, and I will say this. I mean, as a profession, as an industry, the accounting profession as a whole has done a fantastic job in addressing this as an issue because it was a burning platform for them, and they had to. They had to.
Is that across all firms?
It is. I mean, so it was around 9% in 2005 were women, and the latest that I read from an AICPA report last year in 2018 was it's in the 22%. So certainly it's not 50-50, but great strides.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, that's good to see. So social media can cause a little bit of a problem here, and being a promoter of social media, I hate to say this, but it's true. If I'm out with a bunch of friends and they're my work friends, and it's men and women, and maybe we have too many drinks, and there's a picture taken, and people are being maybe a little too silly, but that can cross a line, and the next thing you know, that shows up, and I end up in a real uncomfortable situation. This is what goes through, that would go through my head in today's environment. So what am I going to do? I'm not going. I'm going to avoid that opportunity to build some rapport with my teammates because I'm afraid that something could be misconstrued. How often has that come up?
More often than you would think, and certainly once you put gender into it as well. Right. Because I worked with a partner at EY, wonderful, and did so much to promote women, but he just couldn't get himself to go to dinner one-on-one with a woman mentee, but would be able to do it with men. And
Well, and that can create a bias issue too. Wow, you're going out with him, but you won't go out to dinner with me.
That's right. But what I thought, it was still a successful. He was still such a successful promoter because he was able to talk very authentically about that and say, I want to help you and I want to promote you. Here are the ways that I can do that, and I don't want you to misconstrue what I may do with one of your peers. And so, and I think all of that is progress. I mean, I think all of that
recognizing is progress.
Is recognizing that and saying, look, there is more than one way to have client relationships. You don't have to necessarily go out and drink a little bit too much. I mean, those things happen, right?
Absolutely.
Right. But I think there's what happens is you start having different relationship building activities that are more gender neutral, let's say, or certainly more is available to both genders, if you will.
So I'm thinking, and this is going to be my solution. I want your opinion on this.
Yeah.
That if I'm that manager and I'm always going out to dinner with the guys, never with I should say the men, not the women. I would say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to purposefully plan some dinners, and I'm going to have a man and a woman from my team come join me for dinner.
Sure.
And kind of and it would have to be strategic, right? I probably would have to work with some administrative staff to help me manage this, but say, okay, here are the people that I'd like to spend some time with, and I need one of each sex to come join me at dinner. That's how I would solve it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think everyone has to develop what's most comfortable and authentic to them.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. So
it's sort of like us saying you have to figure out who your audience is and speak to them. You got to figure out the best way for you to manage that.
That's right. And because as much as women love to feel as if they're getting help and getting mentorship, they certainly don't want to feel as if they're checking a box. So if it feels authentic to you, being the invitor, it won't feel that way. But if it's something where you feel like you're doing it because you have to, it will feel inauthentic to the woman. And so I think you have to be authentic with how you solution that. And also you have to consider...
That's hard.
And also you have to consider the woman may not be interested in going to dinner.
True. Oh, that's a very good point.
I mean, there are more and more, not just women, but men who really want to separate, that type of relationship building outside of the evenings in the workplace. They're more interested in having holistic lives professionally.
Right.
So that may mean...
So it may need to be lunch, not dinner, as
exactly.
an example. Yeah. Exactly. And I think those are one of the things that you can figure out how to manage through.
Yeah.
Do you think that social media can help this transition?
I do. I also think it's filled with pitfalls.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I get that.
I think when I am posting, I have to be especially cautious. I want to show who I am and the passion that I bring to this. I also want to provide data, and I want to provide some kind of facts-based type of dialogue into my post so that it's not just my opinion or my emotional reaction to something.
It's very smart.
And most importantly, I want to make sure that it doesn't come across as anti-male, because I think if you're going down a path of trying to promote women in the workplace and you're doing it at the exclusion of bringing men along into that solution, then it's not going to work. I mean, I'm very passionate about how men have to be part of that problem-solving process, and they have to be able to bring that into how we solve this, for women in the workplace.
That's brilliant. I told you this. We're going to run out of time so fast, and we are running out of time. Not to steal the last thought, but the struggle today, and we are all responsible for our social media, our profiles, and what we say on social media. There are people who are creating inflammatory posts that are making your job, and if I could say it that way, your job harder, because they are much more interested in inflaming versus figuring out solutions, and that's the pitfall piece, and that's the struggle. I think that we have to realize that what we say on social media can create a larger splash than we think. I think Mark Zuckerberg, there are people that argue me with this, and I've had people argue. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg really understood the impact that Facebook would have on elections. I think it blew him away. I think he was, at first, we're not going to affect an election.
As an observer said, oh, this is interesting, but then went, oh, wow. Yeah, that really got out of hand pretty quickly.
It is pretty amazing. Well, Beth, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Great
Enjoyed
conversation. I wish we had an hour. We could go for an hour and continue this. And for anyone listening, if you would like to hear more or throw a question, you can certainly throw a question to me. But I want you to be able to find Beth. So where can people find you? Where's the best spot online?
Yeah, well, you can get to my website at www.thegenderplan.com. That actually takes you directly to my website, and it tells you a little bit about me and the services I provide. I am also on LinkedIn, Beth Schiavo, Schiavo. And then I have a Instagram page that I keep, you talked about life hacks and tips, and I try to put something in there fairly frequently about just
peanut butter
tips.
and glue.
Peanut butter and glue. I think that will be my next one.
I actually see the glass. I see the peanut butter. Yeah,
peanut butter solves all.
Instagram.
Peanut butter solves all. That's how we're going to get gender equity through peanut butter. So
I like that.
So you can find the gender plan on Instagram as well.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I truly appreciate it. I'd like to share how you guys can find ePresence, and so it's easy as this. Go to the web, search ePresence. You'll be able to find our website, and if you're looking for us on social media, our handle is the same everywhere. It's just like mine. It's ePresence ME. So all together at ePresence ME. That's on Twitter, that's on Facebook, that's on Instagram, you name it. It's the same handle everywhere. Make sure you look to do that for yourself. Standardize your handle everywhere. Love for you to like us or follow us on whatever social media platform is best for you, and we'll continue to share great tips. I'll have to talk about things like that peanut butter thing more often on our own sites. But we're always sharing tips and giving you ways that you can harness your social media a little better. We're curating all the time, frankly, and so we need to start posting things without the link right in the middle of it because it'll optimize those posts too. Again, thank you for joining us here on How's Your ePresence. We broadcast live on the third Thursday of each month at 3 o'clock Eastern, or just remember, the third Thursday at 3. You can listen to any of our shows 24/7 by going to businessradiox.com, select the Gwinnett Studio. That would make Mike Salmon very happy, and then select How's Your ePresence. That's our show logo. It's right there. If you want, you can listen to any of our shows on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Spotify. You can just search there for How's Your ePresence, and we are there for the others. And also, we do some other I was going to say subsidizing. That is technically can be the right word, but we're helping out and offering some other content. Recently, I interviewed the CEO of the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau, William Pate, and that's on our iTunes channel. But for ePresence and more about ePresence, you can find us at our website at epresence.me. That's ePresence.me, because it's all about you. And you can find us anywhere on any social media platform using the same thing. Just drop the dot. Until next time, for my guest, Beth Schiavo, I'm Mark Galvin, and this has been How's Your ePresence on Business Radio X.